Hey there, everybody. This is Kevin from happycoding.io. And in the previous video, we talked about a feature that GitHub offers called the GitHub Profile README. And that gave us some familiarity with GitHub and the idea of like a repository. And we practiced like the flow of making a change to a local file and uploading it to GitHub to show this README section of my profile. So if you haven't seen that video yet, or if you haven't worked through that tutorial, either go back. I'll put a link in the description of this video, and make sure that you work through that first, so that we can get started on today's video or today's lesson, whatever, where I want to talk about another feature called GitHub Pages. Thinking about the GitHub profile README, that lets us write Markdown or HTML that is then shown in my GitHub profile, or in your GitHub profile if you create one. And that's nice, and it lets you sort of customize your profile, and you can add images and links and HTML and all that stuff. But there is quite a few limitations. Like, you can't use CSS, so you can't style your page however you want, and you can't use JavaScript, so you can't really make it interactive. So if that's something that you want to investigate, you'll end up learning more about HTML and CSS and JavaScript, but to show your web page to the world, you need a place to host your files. And so to give you a URL that you can send out that sends people to your web page. But it's kind of getting ahead of myself there. But generally what I want to say is that I want to talk about GitHub Pages today, which lets you turn a GitHub repository into a web page, basically. The other thing I'll mention is that I'm putting this video tutorial together, but I've actually written a written version of this tutorial as well. So if you prefer text over video, then come to happycoding.io and check out the GitHub Pages tutorial. But for those of you who like videos, I'm going to walk through it sort of in video format as well. So I am in GitHub, and what I want to do is create a new repo. And there are a few different kinds of GitHub Pages repositories. I can create one that will be deployed to like my username, so Kevin Workman, kevinworkman.github.io, or I could deploy like a project repo that's then deployed to my username, kevinworkman.github.io / my repo name. So it kind of depends on what kind of URL you're looking for, what kind of web page you're planning on building. But for now, what I'm going to do is create a repo that is called kevinworkman.github.io. And similar to the sort of magical repository name for the GitHub profile README, this is another sort of magical repo name that signals to GitHub that you want to create a GitHub Pages repository. So the name kind of matters here. So make it your username.github.io, and make it public, and check this add a README file checkbox while you're at it. You can always add it later, but this saves us a step. So check that and then click create repo. All right, so now I have my repository in GitHub, which is where I can put my files and my code files and whatnot. But before we get too far into it, what I want to do is check out the settings tab. Go over here to settings, and then scroll down to the GitHub Pages section. And so because I used this kind of magic kevinworkman.github.io repo name, it already has activated the GitHub Pages feature. But if I was working out of a different repo with a different name, I could enable GitHub Pages here. So if you wanted to do that, then that's how you would do it. You would create a different repo with a different name, and then you'd come to the settings tab, and you would choose your branch and stuff, and enable GitHub Pages here. But since I use the magic name, all of these settings are kind of set up by default, so I actually don't need to change anything here. But I wanted to point it out just for like future reference. If you want to create another GitHub Pages site that's not necessarily tied to the sort of top level your username.github.io URL, then that's how you do it. You'd come here. But anyway, I'm going to go back to sort of the home page for my repo. And all right, let's see. So the sort of magic of this is that the way GitHub Pages works is behind the scenes, GitHub deploys these files. Right now I only have one file, readme.md. It deploys those files to this URL, kevinworkman.github.io. So if I come over here and I type that in, kevinworkman.github.io, and right now the only file in my repo is this readme.md, so I'm going to put that in here too, readme.md. And so I've typed in my URL, and you can see that here is sort of the raw content of this README file. So let's see, if I go here and I click raw, you'll see like the same thing. Here's the raw content, and here it is deployed to this URL. And that's sort of the magic of GitHub Pages. Anything that's in your repo will show up at this URL. So this README file is not super interesting. I guess I could add content to it, but really, if you're using GitHub Pages, you probably your end goal is to work with HTML. So that's the direction I'm going to go here. So what I want to do is clone my repo, and I could use like the git command line, but I'm not feeling like it today. I think I'll just stick with GitHub Desktop. So I'm going to click this drop down, and I'm going to open my repo with GitHub Desktop. That's going to automatically open up the desktop client, and I can clone my repo this way. And so that has downloaded the repo and has sort of connected it using this GitHub Desktop application. And so I can go there in my file explorer. So that's in here somewhere, GitHub. kevinworkman.github.io. Here's the directory that corresponds to my repository. And cool, there we see the single README file in my local copy of my repo. And so next, what I want to do, so my end goal is to sort of upload an HTML file to my repo. And there's a bunch of ways to do that, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a blank file here. I can call it a text document, whatever, index.html. Sorry, that was probably loud. It's annoying. But yeah, fine. So I've got this index.html file. Right now it's empty. And so let me open up a basic text editor, and let me throw some HTML in there. So I never like write HTML from scratch. I always just kind of steal something from previous tutorial. So here, copy paste. And maybe I would call this like my GitHub Pages site. And I can maybe change this content to like hello world, sort of traditional computer sciencey thing. Welcome to my GitHub Pages site. Yay. So I've saved that using my text editor here, and what I want to do next is go back into GitHub Desktop and sort of upload that file back to my repo. So I can see my change here. Here's the file that I just created, and I can maybe double check the syntax, looks okay. And so I'll create my commit message. It doesn't really matter, really. So I'm going to commit that, and then I need to push it. So I will push my change back to GitHub. And this will take a second, and it's uploading, and it's done. Okay, I'll close that out. And let me close some of these tabs. Yeah, good enough. And so if I refresh here, I'll see my index.html page here. So here's the content in GitHub that I just wrote locally. And now, drum roll please, the sort of magic part is that I can go back to my GitHub pages URL, which is my username.github.io, and I'll add like index.html here. And what I should see, there we go. I see the rendered HTML of the file that I just created deployed to this URL. So that's the fundamentals of GitHub pages. I can now send this URL to anyone I want. I could post it on social media or whatever. I could come to Happy Coding's forum and post it there. Spoiler alert, that's what you should do. I'd love to see what you're working on. But the idea is that now we are using GitHub pages as a host, and this lets me have this URL that I can send people. Another thing I'll mention is that the reason I named that file index.html is that it's like a default like web server setting or convention that if I leave the file name off, so if I just have kevinworkman.github.io, then the web server, in this case the web server that GitHub Pages is running, will sort of automatically look for a file named index.html. So it means I can just hit enter here, and you'll see the same index.html file rendered, even though I haven't specified it here. So it's kind of a cleaner looking URL. Anyway, so yeah, those are that's the hello world version of GitHub Pages. So from here, what I could do is, maybe I'll make a change and I'll say, I don't actually know. I didn't come up with this stuff ahead of time. So maybe what I'll do is I'll pretend that I'm like making a little like portfolio website. So I could say like, here are some things I'm working on, and maybe I'll make a list. And if you're not super familiar with HTML, that's totally fine. This is like a great way to sort of learn it. So shameless self-promotion, if you want to learn more about HTML, come to happycoding.io and check out our tutorial section and scroll down until you find our HTML tutorials. And this will introduce everything that you need to know. But for now, I'm just going to kind of tinker for a minute just to demonstrate the sort of the power of GitHub Pages. So I'm kind of stealing this directly from what I originally put in my GitHub profile README. So whatever, I'm not super creative. But the idea is that you have complete control over this. This can be anything you want. If you want to make a web page that's all about your dog, like go for it. That's awesome. If you want to make a web page that's all about like the projects you're working on and like more professional and like something you would put on a resume, that's also like a really great use of GitHub Pages. But for now, I'm just going to put something like this together. So I have edited my HTML file on my local computer, on my hard drive, and I could, if I wasn't quite ready to deploy this to my live site, like I wasn't sure if the HTML was right or if I was just kind of experimenting, I could open this directly up, like in my browser using this like file. Let's see, it's Chrome. Come on, there you go. So this like file / type of URL, which lets me open up the file locally without it being deployed to a live site. So if I go back here, it's still the old content. So this lets me kind of tinker locally without breaking anything that other people can see. Anyway, this looks pretty good to me. And so what I want to do is upload my changes back to GitHub. So I'm going to open up GitHub Desktop. I could also do this over the command line, but whatever, GitHub Desktop is a little easier in my opinion anyway. So here's the diff view, and you can see that I've added a few lines, and that makes sense because that's exactly what I just did. adding things I'm working on, something like that. Commit message, commit that to my branch, my main branch, and then push it up to GitHub. And the upload takes just a second. And now if I go back to GitHub, or if I go back to that repo, let me get back in there. So now I should see, yep, here's the commit message, which shows up kind of here and in a couple other places. But if I open up this, here's the content I just added. So if I go refresh my GitHub Pages site, then I will see that here. So that's the flow of using GitHub Pages. You create a repository, then you clone that repository, which gives you a local copy of that repo, and you can add and modify the files here, and then use either GitHub Desktop or the Git command line client to upload those changes back to GitHub, and GitHub will automatically update your live URL. So maybe I'll branch out, and maybe what I'll do is like add some CSS, maybe just to demonstrate that this is like a full web page that you have full control over. So I don't know, I'm not like an expert in CSS or anything, but let's maybe just let's just play for a minute. So let me steal some syntax. What do I want? I want like the external style sheet thing. Yeah, this line here. So I'm going to add something like this to my HTML in my head section, and then I'm going to create a styles.css file. I could name it anything I want, but I've called it styles, so I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to create that here. Sorry, it's probably loud. I should just disable all my system sounds. Anyway, but what I can do is, now I have full control over the CSS of my web page, which I did not have with the GitHub profile README. I can't change the CSS of this, but I can change the CSS of this. So let's just try something. Maybe let's wrap. I don't know. Let's wrap this in a div. And you spaces, yeah, cool. So I'm going to put that whole thing in a div, and maybe what I'll do is just add a style for that. So dot, what did I call it? Content. This is one of the easiest styles you can add to kind of make it look kind of interesting. So I'm going to give it like a hard-coded width of, I don't know, 500 pixels, and then I'm going to give it a margin auto, which is going to center it, I think. Like I said, I'm not a CSS expert, but again, if you wanted to learn more about CSS, you can come to happycoding.io and check out our CSS tutorial, and play around with it and see what you like. But let's see if I open this up locally, does this do what I want? And yeah, it does. So you see that this is now kind of centered and it's in the middle. And what I might do is even add a border, maybe. Maybe I'll add some padding, maybe. And the idea is that you can play around with this to make it look however you want, but hopefully this kind of demonstrates that I have kind of control over the CSS here. So maybe, let's see, top, bottom. So maybe I do 25 pixels, 50 pixels, something like that, just to move it a little bit up. Yeah, okay. It seems fine, seems reasonable. I could maybe add an image while I'm at it. I should have planned this ahead a little bit better. I don't have an image handy. Let's see. Maybe I'll just use this image. Can I steal you? Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Maybe I'll spell my name right. We'll see. And is that what I want? Yeah, good enough. Cool. So maybe I'll add that to my my HTML here. So something like image source equals what do I call it? Just my name.jpg. And I'll refresh my sort of local copy of that. And yeah, okay, that's looking pretty good. And you know, you can play with this a little bit more, but you can see that you know, I have control over this. So maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I'll do like, I don't know, body. Maybe I give this a color or background color. So like background color, maybe it's, you know, maybe it's black. And maybe my content has a background color, or actually, let me, you know, this is where you can start to fill around. CSS can be pretty fun, but I don't want to spend too much time because I wanted to focus on like the GitHub Pages aspect and not the CSS aspect. But I do want to just kind of demonstrate, you know, the fun parts of it. So maybe this gets a background color of, I don't know, this kind of dark gray color I kind of like, and maybe I give it a color of pure white. Maybe we'll see. I can always change this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, good enough. So let's just see what this looks like. Yeah, man, I like this. So it's kind of like you know, maybe dark mode or whatever. But you can see that the sort of flow of it is I'm making changes to my local files here. So I have not uploaded this to GitHub yet, and I'm testing it locally in my browser here. And you know, if I go back here to my GitHub, my live site, you know, this has not changed yet. This is still the old version because I have not uploaded it yet. And so let's do that now. Let's you know, practice the flow. So here's GitHub desktop, and you can see the changes I made. Here's the before, here's the after kind of thing, and here's the image I added and the styles.css file I added. So maybe I'll just say like adding CSS, commit, and then push. And that looks like it finished. So what I can do is, you know, come back to GitHub in my repo and see that the files are there. And then go back to my live URL and hit refresh. And, you know, sometimes it takes a minute between the time that I upload and GitHub, you know, updates the live site. But another thing I can do is a cache clearing refresh that sometimes works. So I'm going to do like Control F5 to clear out the local copy that I might have stored. So let's try that. And no, we're still just kind of waiting on GitHub, I guess. Yeah, okay, there it goes. It just took a minute because there's some behind the scenes stuff that GitHub is doing. After I upload the files, it just takes a minute for it to come over to the live site. But here you are. Now I could send this URL out, and they would the people who visited that URL would see this. And this is a good way to like host your files in a way that means your like your live site and your repo are always in sync, because like by definition, GitHub Pages takes whatever's in your repo and automatically deploys it to your live URL. So there's not like a separate process for deploying or a separate process for like making sure that the stuff shows up at the URL. GitHub handles all of that for you. And it's like you get all of the benefits of GitHub. You know, so I could go clone this repo on a different computer, for example, or I could, you know, invite my friends to make their own changes, you know, if I wanted to work with a team. And, you know, we'd have all of the benefits of GitHub, but also all of the benefits of this sort of live deployment process, which, you know, gives you this URL. So I think that's where I'm going to stop. That's GitHub Pages. You create a repo either using your username.github.io, or you go into the settings tab and you scroll down to the GitHub Pages section, and you can set it up here. You clone your repo, which gives you a local copy, and you can make whatever changes you want here, including adding, HTML files, image files, CSS files. You could add JavaScript as well. I didn't do that here just for the sake of time, but nothing would be stopping me from that because I have full control over this code because it's mine. Whereas my GitHub profile README, there's a lot of restrictions here. So GitHub Pages lets you take it to kind of the next level, and you can do anything you can do in HTML and CSS JavaScript you can do in GitHub Pages, because that's exactly what GitHub Pages is. It's a web host that will give you this friendly URL that you can send to people and have them check out what you're working on. So it's a good like GitHub Pages is a good tool to use to create a portfolio page or a page collecting the stuff you've been working on and slap that on your resume, or I guess I should say come to Happy Coding, come to our forum, and I'd love to see a link to your GitHub Pages site. So I'd love to check it out and see what you're up to. But yeah, so I'll say if you have any questions, either leave a comment down in the comment section, or again, come to happycoding.io. I'm always hanging out here, so I'd love to hear from you if you have a question about how something works, or if you're stuck on something. But for now, I think that's where I'm going to end this. And so thank you for watching, and have a great day. And as always, happy coding.